Mm. Yeah. No, well, I can't talk. I can't talk for long because I'm about to. I'm about to go on and do Critic's log. Yeah, Starfleet Academy, episode 9. No, I mean it was very nearly Star Trek. Yeah, and I nearly enjoyed it. Mm. I don't know. I mean, how do you communicate that to an audience that's expecting you to despise every episode and sort of come up with this, vitriolic ranting about it? I don't know. I don't know what I'll do. I'll just wing it like I always do, really. No, it's tough. I mean, obviously, it still sucks. Mm. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks. See you. Bye. Bye. Wrong number. Space. A continuous extension interval between planets, stars, and other objects. These are the critiques of the critic McElvoy. His continuing mission to review strange new shows, to seek out new work and new bastardizations, to boldly note what no critic has noted before. Yes, I'm Dr. McElvoy. It's not my real name. Welcome to another edition of Critic's Log. It's Starfleet Academy. It's episode 9. It's called 300th Night. And it's a collaboration between those two franchise traitors. Kirsten Beyer used to write Star Trek Voyager novels before she joined Kurtzman's cabal. And our old friend Beardy Jonathan Frakes, Commander Riker, director, of course, of multiple Star Trek episodes and 2 Star Trek movies, which we don't really like to discuss. And he's back. He's back to do his thing. So you've got 2 people who ostensibly know something about Star Trek involved in an episode of Star Trek, and consequently 300th Night is an episode that looks sometimes a bit like an episode of Star Trek. It's got a sort of Star Trekian feel to it. It's not, the soap operatic melodrama that we've experienced in previous Starfleet Academy episodes, at least not entirely. You've got a rescue, you've got space battles, you've got spectacle, you've got a fist fight, you've got a bit of excitement, you've got a visit to another alien planet, and in that respect it's very, very similar to what a Star Trek episode might be. Of course, this is Starfleet Academy, so there's the usual nonsense, the sweary dialogue, there are 3 alien ships chasing the USS Athena, and Jet Reno says something and like, well, those 3 starships can kiss my ass. I mean, this is Kurtzman Trek, this is what they do, this is what they say. Characters are full of shit. I mean, we know they're full of shit. We've been watching them for 9 weeks, but we don't expect to hear it in dialogue. So, what's 300th Night about? Why is it called 300th Night? Well, because it's the end of the academic year at Starfleet Academy. I know what you're thinking, 9 episodes and it's a year already, but you see what they're trying to do is replicate the Harry Potter model. 1 series per academic year. And just as in Harry Potter, there's no real sense that sort of time has actually passed. So, what strikes you straight off the bat is that after a year, you're not really certain what these characters have learned. What have they done? Because you haven't seen them being put through the academic ringer. They've been on space missions and they've lost people, and some of the relationships between them have been sketched in, you know. Krag and Darem are brothers for no reason, and there's a love triangle between Genesis and Caleb, who we're reminded in this episode is apparently a genius, even though he acts like a lunk. And Terima, the betazoid that can kill people with a mine. And then there's Sam, series acclamation Mill 2.0. Now remember last week in a shock, she lived her whole life again. She was rebooted, literally. Lived her whole life again up to the point of being an irritating teenager, but was parented by the Doctor from Star Trek Voyager, who is in this show for no reason. And that, you'll recall, led to this question, which would be, would she be a completely different person in this episode? She should be. I mean, there's always a debate, isn't there, about nature versus nurture. To what extent are we the products of our genes, and therefore we have certain innate characteristics that manifest themselves psychologically over time? That would be the case whether we'd met our parents or we hadn't met them, and to what extent are we the product of upbringing, nurture? Now, there shouldn't be any debate with Sam 2.0 because there is no nature. She's a hologram. She's photons. There's no genes involved here. She's just a blank. Now, the first time they tried this, that made her into an imbecile. They sent that imbecile to Starfleet Academy, and she took up the place of a human that deserved the place at the academy, and there she was, irritating everybody and acting as though she had, shall we say, mental health problems. Well, that version of Sam, thankfully, is gone. Now, what would replace her? Could the actress and the writers handle this monumental change? That was the question we asked in this episode, because Sam 2.0 should really be very similar to the Doctor, shouldn't she? After all, she was brought up for 17 years with only one man. No friends, no socialising, no contact with real children, just the Doctor. So we would expect somebody who was kind of slightly cynical, obsessed with medicine and opera, perhaps. Someone who was only really comfortable with men. And maybe that's what we get at the beginning of this episode. After all, Sam 2.0 doesn't want to share with Genesis anymore, not in the second year. Which is hard to understand. Because Genesis is such polite company. So, there's a question about why Sam seems to be sort of like the old Sam, only with the more, shall we say, retarded edges sanded down. She's a better character in that she's more restrained, a little bit more logical, a little bit more mature. But there's still some evidence of the old Sam. She's still a blubber. She's still a hugger. She cries, even though she's a hologram. Or simulated tear ducts. I mean, what possible function could that have in a photonic life form? Why would a photonic life form need to cry? But she cries. So she's still big-hearted, impulsive Sam. Despite, really, she should be a completely different person. But it's tricky. I mean, when the writers thought about rebooting her, clearly horrified having seen the dailies from the first few episodes, they didn't really give any consideration as to how one reconciles Sam 1.0 with Sam 2.0. You can't have completely different character. Or the 9 people who've invested in Sam 1.0 would think that was a betrayal of the audience. So it has to be a sort of evolution of the character slightly without being a completely different person. Which is a shame, because we want a completely different person, because the first version was terrible. That's going on in the background of this episode. But what this episode is really about is our old friend Caleb. You'll remember a long time ago now, in the first episode, he and his mother were separated, and she was sentenced to 15 years in prison by the Federation. She naturally hates the Federation. We're shocked to learn son has become a Federation cadet, Starfleet cadet, and all the rest of it. Anyway, she's been sending him messages for years which he can't decode, revealing where she is. One conversation with Sam 2.0 sorts that out, so obviously Caleb is not as smart as he thought he was. They decide to steal a shuttle. They take Genesis and Derem and go to rescue her. And she's on a planet which is about to be annexed by an evil organisation. What are they called? The Venari Ral. Maybe they've been mentioned before on this show. Maybe they haven't. I don't remember. But they're evil. That's all you need to know. They're a sort of evil empire about to annex this planet, so they have to go and get her. When Chancellor Aki learns of it, she feels guilty and decides to go and rescue them. But this is all happening against a backdrop of interstellar geopolitical madness, because our old friend Noose Braco doesn't feature in this episode, but inevitably will in the climax next week, has apparently harvested from that starship a long time ago omega particles, or synthetic omega particles. Now, you may remember in the Voyager episode, yeah, I know, again, you've got to have seen an episode of Star Trek Voyager to make this stuff make sense. God help, most of the world. But there was a Voyager episode called the Omega Directive, I believe, in which we learned of the Omega particle and its, potential to destroy subspace so that warp travel couldn't occur. It's the most dangerous particle in the universe, and Starfleet captains who encounter it, as Janeway did in the Delta Quadrant, have to destroy it. That sort of general order 0. It's the most dangerous thing ever. Now, by the 32nd century, apparently it's possible to synthesize the Omega particle and turn it into a mine. An Omega 47 mine, if you like. So there have been 47 iterations of the Omega particle. What did they do with the other 46? We're not told, and we'll never know, because nobody knows, not even the writers of this episode. So, Newsbrock has stolen the Omega particle and he's used it to create Omega mines, which, if detonated, would make warp travel impossible. It would be the Burn 2.0. Except this time, it would affect everybody, because you couldn't solve it by using an alternative power source like a singularity drive or whatever. You just couldn't travel at warp. Does that affect transwarp? Does that affect... I don't know. Don't ask me those sorts of stupid questions. It's all made up, innit? I'm not a 32nd century scientist. I don't know the answer. So, anyway, it's serious, because if Braga gets his way, then the entire Federation will be isolated forever within its own borders, unable to visit each other. And wouldn't that be a disaster, because there'd be no more Star Trek? So big stakes. It's Star Trek itself that's on the line here. Which kind of, in a way, mirrors the real world situation, but we won't get into it. This isn't the video for corporate buyouts and shenanigans, and is Alex Kurtzman's contract finally coming to an end? We won't talk about that. We can just dream and secretly hope. So, Aki's rescue mission, in which Tarima and Jaden stow away upon because, you know, they've got to contrive to get all these characters together, inadvertently puts them outside the Federation and therefore outside Bracca's trap, meaning that at the end of this episode, they are the only starship, yes, the only starship, that can possibly do something about it, because they're from the outside looking in, they're not trapped inside the bubble with the entire Federation fleet. Apparently the entire Federation fleet can be manipulated by one man who talks like an idiot into withdrawing into their own borders to the extent that they can be trapped therein, even though they have knowledge that he has a warp-destroying mine available to him. Think about the repercussions of that for a little while, if you dare. I don't dare, but you go ahead. And that's next week's episode, right? So sorry, briefly back to this week's episode. So we meet Caleb's mother, and she's a bit of a, she doesn't like the Federation. She wants Caleb to run off with her for a life of thieving and being a mercenary, and you know they're on this terrible cliched planet. It's Tagatodo from Star Chaser. It's every slightly industrial, grimy alien metropolis you've ever seen. It's got markets and bartering and electric fans, industrial electric fans and that sort of thing, and neon signs, and you know the sort of, you've seen it a million times. There's no original design elements in this show. So, you know, there's the cadets get captured, then they get rescued by the Athena that comes down from high, so you get a bit of Frakesian spectacle. Beam them up with the mother, and then discover Bracca's plot. They work it out remotely, and that sets up the next episode. And that's really it. That's basically what happened in 300th Night. Now, there were some questions here. Notably, why Admiral Vance, when he appears, seems to be sharing this intel primarily with the two university chancellors. That's the Starfleet Academy Chancellor and the War College Chancellor. What's it to them? This is high-level intelligence. This is existential stuff. You'd expect to see Vance in a sort of a war room, a sort of the Federation's version of NORAD. Do you remember the big control room from Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home, sort of Starfleet central area, the central plexus on San Francisco? That's what you'd expect to see. Them sitting there saying, well, my God, if these mines are detonated, that's the end of the Federation. No, what we get is Vance appearing in Aki's office as a hologram to brief her on presumably something which is top secret. So, what are these chancellors also like the Federation's chief strategists or something? I mean, they're university chancellors. All they need to know about is, you know, funding and changes to staffing, right? And what the facilities budget is. Whether they're going to be able to run that class they wanted to run or not. What the latest student numbers are. Not high-level intelligence, which is at the heart of the Federation's very existence, right? You know, pertinent to its existence. If I want to know what the current defence condition of the country is, I don't ring up the Chancellor of Oxford University and ask him. Do I? I'd expect to be briefed by somebody, you know, in the Ministry of Defence. But apparently in the 32nd century it works very differently. Apparently if you want to know what's going on at the highest level, Just go and talk to the head of Starfleet Academy. They'll tell you. They know everything. So it's maximum security. In fact, Caleb and one of the other students walk in the middle of a discussion about ship deployment.
Now, I've compiled a list of those with security clearance. Have you got it, darling?
Yes, sir.
Read it, please.
It's top security, sir. I think that's all the captain needs to know.
Nonsense! Let's hear the list in full.
Very well, sir. List of personnel cleared for mission Gainsborough, as dictated by General C.H. Melcher. You and me, darling, obviously. Field Marshal Haig, Field Marshal Haig's wife, all Field Marshal Haig's wife's friends, their families' servants, their family servants' tennis partners, and some chap I bumped into in the mess the other day called Bernard.
So, it's maximum security, is that clear?
Quite clear, sir. Only myself and the rest of the English-speaking world is to know.
Good man.
They've become fleet strategists, which is odd. Because the writers of this show can't think of any organic way to show us this information without it being shared with the top characters. They're mistaking the role that these characters play at the Academy with the role of, say, a Federation starship captain who would be on a mission, who would be intrinsic to foiling the scheme. You'd expect Captain Picard, or the 32nd century equivalent thereof, to get such a briefing, because the Enterprise might be asked to go in and sort it out and find Brucker and shut him down. So it would be a case of need to know. Why does the Chancellor of the University need to know? What's it to them? Do you understand? Now look, Kirsten Beyer, you know, she used to be a reasonably good Star Trek writer, not so much these days. I understand that she's probably got a clipboard of directives from Kurtzman's office, and she's got to sort of reconcile that imbecility with her own instincts. But God Almighty, throw those of us who still want to see an episode of Star Trek a frickin' bone. Frakes. What does Frakes do? He gives it a sort of light-hearted touch, keeps it breezy and action-orientated. That's his thing. He's good with actors, so you get some nice character work in the episode. It's not too bad. Like I said, it's almost an episode of Star Trek. You can almost believe it. It's the leaps in logic and the terrible dialogue that takes you out of it. Why, for example, does the Athena have a computer that's so discursive? In the old days, Majel Barrett delivered the lines with a sort of cold, machine-like efficiency. You understood you were talking to the computer. But when Aki asks the Athena's computer what's going on, it says, "Well, Captain, I'm sorry to say it looks like we're in trouble. I regret to inform you, Captain Aki, that shields are down to 12%. Ooh, my word, if I were you, I would reroute some power, perhaps from secondary systems to compensate. But that's just me, that's just what I do." Isn't it bad enough that AI in our time talks to you with that sort of horrid over-familiarity like it's your new best pal? We don't want it in the future. So 300th Night, it sets up next week's episode reasonably well. And dare I say that after several weeks of sort of listless, boring melodrama, soap operatic rubbish, we might actually want to see the final episode. I mean, there are big stakes. We're almost certainly going to get some sort of intense confrontation between the gang and Paul Giamatti, God bless him, in what could be a career-ending performance for him.
Everything changes, and science fiction's all about change and, growth and new.
And I don't know, some sense of resolution for year one. It's a shame that there's going to be a year two, but what can you do. Kurtzman's not stupid. He knows that if he had to wait for a series order based on critical acclaim and ratings, it would never come. So it's best to front load production, get it all in the can. Oh, you're thinking of axing Starfleet Academy? Well, too bad, I've already made 90 episodes. How can he get away with it? Who in the name of sanity drafted any kind of contract that allowed him and Secret Hideout to get away with that? Do you understand it? Every season of this show is costing $100 million. $100 million! But we can't have Deep Space Nine and Voyager in HD. Now that's an injustice. That, to me, is the equivalent of being surrounded by Omega-47 mines. So, we have our cliffhanger. We will march together into the final week. Can Starfleet Academy Season 1 end on a high of sorts? And that's a relative high. It's the equivalent to most of us sitting down, but we'll settle for that because for most of this run we've been on our knees. I don't know the answer, you don't know the answer, but you'll come back next week and we'll learn it together. Until then, I'm Dr. McAvoy. It's not my real name. Out!
Close the channel, Mr. Worf.
Gladly, sir.